FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network, and I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is 10/9/17. Just about done with this year. The way things have been going recently, we're better off being done, but there have been some good things to come out of this year, personally and professionally, as far as the economy is concerned, as far as you're concerned. But we're looking now at the Trump tax plan, so-called tax reform. What's it going to do for the savers? What's it going to do for you? What's it going to do for those of you looking to build wealth? Will it help you build wealth, or is it just going to be more of the same gobbledygook that you get out of the swamp, what the swamp produces in prodigious quantities? Well, let's talk to Michael Eastham, good friend, fellow Floridian from Fellowship Financial Group. And Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Kerry. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Hey, so looking at Trump's tax plan, you're of the opinion that it could be a big win for retirement savers and for, I guess, people who are trying to save for their retirement, save for whatever it might be, their estate, their legacy.
Yeah, I think there are lots of ways you can look at this where it's positive all the way around. You know, if I'm an employer, an employee, I'm a saver, then I want to look at it from the employer side of the equation, because for many 401ks that have some sort of a corporate match, well, if the employers get a tax cut, well, they've got more money to invest. They may increase contributions for employee retention, for example, or whether it's matching or profit sharing. So that's one big reason. Another thing that's important, I think, has to do with Roth IRAs. Many middle-class workers are likely to see a reduction in marginal tax rates. So if you pay a lower rate now at a lower rate, then it may be more beneficial to contribute to a Roth, which is after-tax contribution. So you pay tax right now, but your Roth will grow tax-free. It's not subject to RMDs or minimum distributions at age 70 and a half. Withdrawals are tax-free. They can be passed on to beneficiaries tax-free. Lots of great benefits, and the incentive all starts with a lower tax rate.
Yeah, so a lower tax rate. Obviously, then you want to put as much as you want to pay the tax, the lower tax rate now, because obviously the fear of the future always, regardless who's president, regardless what party is in power, you have a very good chance of having a higher tax rate in the future, especially with the huge deficits and huge amount of debt that we're undertaking in this country.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And one of the reasons why you may want to consider that Roth now, and don't forget the fact that a lot of 401ks have a Roth component to it. So you may be limited to contributing $5,500 or $6,500, depending on your age, to a traditional Roth. But inside your 401k, if you've got a Roth allocation there, well, you can increase that amount to $18,000 to $24,000 a year. That's a huge difference if you can sock that money away tax-free. So it's very important to take that into consideration and not forget about the potential larger impact.
Yeah. So there's other factors, obviously, in the in this tax scheme, as it were, as the Brits would say. They would call it a scheme. Nothing derogatory. That's just what they call these things. So in this scheme, what about the fact that it's going to cut the corporate tax rate? Is that really going to help the stock prices of publicly traded entities? Because they've already got it. Some believe it's already priced in there, and others believe that, look, most companies, I think they pay an average rate of 17 or 18%. If they're a publicly traded company, it might have the opposite effect upon them.
Yeah, the one thing that people don't really understand, and is not something that you see on the surface, is I look at a lot at what's called a PE ratio, or a price to earnings ratio, as a stable of value or representative value. And if you think about a corporate tax cut from 35 down to 20%, that's an immediate boost in earnings of about 23%. And what the impact that has is it drops the price to earnings ratio. And that may give a false perception that everything is much, much better. But yeah, I think you're right. The pricing, the pricing of stocks does already build in a perceived tax cut. And so you have to be careful if you're an investor to say, wow, PE ratios they just dropped literally with the flick of a switch. And now I'm going to jump in because these stocks are more value priced. You could get caught in a major correction and have that have your knees wiped out from under you if you're not paying close attention. So you could have a false perception of value just by the drop in the tax code, in the corporate tax rates.
Right. So, it could already be in there. But then again, well, like I said, big companies like GE, Microsoft, Google, Apple, they pay next to nothing in federal taxes anyway because they're using every loophole in the book. GE's got high rises full of accountants and tax attorneys to help them pay nothing. They paid nothing probably since you and I have been alive. They paid next to nothing. That's why they're the biggest leasing company on the planet, leasing jets, railroad cars, you name it. They lease everything because then they depreciate it and they wind up paying no taxes. They're brilliant at it. So for them, if anything, they might wind up paying a little bit more, but probably they'll pay nothing. But the mid-tier of companies who really take it on the chin, and those are often your quick-growing, smaller tier of publicly traded companies, for them, there really could be a benefit there, and it might really unleash a lot of investment into the economy. Do you think that's so?
I do think that's right. And I mean, if you think about a company that has, let's look at $1 million in net profits. Well, if they're paying a 35% tax on that, well, then they have $650,000 after tax income. If the code drops down to 20% on the corporate side, well, they just had a boost. It went up to $800,000. That's an extra $150,000. And that's just one company. And it's just saying, $1 million in profit. So more money at the corporate level at the bottom line means more money to invest, more money to hire people, and that's true economic growth. It's not the propagated nonsense through quantitative easing and the smoke and mirrors that the Federal Reserve has been playing with. This is true economic growth that we've seen work time and time again through the Reagan years, Kennedy as well. So lots of reality there in just that reduction in taxes.
So what about repatriation of foreign stranded profits, which they're really not stranded? I mean, look, Apple has Apple Ireland. They have $8 trillion in the bank, but they're not keeping it in Euro banks because nobody trusts the European banking system. Apple Euro opens up an account at Bank of America in Manhattan or Citibank, or take your pick. And the profits are effectively repatriated without paying the tax. Obviously, repatriation is going to be a big part of this tax plan because it's going to bring in revenue that otherwise wouldn't be there. But it really doesn't solve the problem here, does it?
No, I don't think it does, but I think your observation is correct in that, they're going to be bringing in, the desire is to create incentives for companies to invest more in the United States in jobs, in factories, and those types of things, sales, and engineering development. So I do think it'll have that effect.
Right. So, and it's going to bring in taxes. So,
correct.
Don't you think it'd be a good idea to just say to the publicly traded companies to avoid this situation in the future, look, we cut your taxes. Right. You are no longer going to be able to claim on your financial statements any profit from overseas that you haven't paid taxes on. So we're getting rid of deferred taxes here. This is what you have to do, and therefore you got to pay the taxes on it. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I just think when you start, if they tinker too much with the tax code, then they're going to have the tax attorneys and the CPAs and all those guys who make a living out of having highly complicated tax codes and deferred credits and all those types of things. That lobby is massive. It's very lucrative. So I think that making it too simple is not going to happen, and that's one of the reasons why I don't really feel like as appealing as a flat tax might be, I don't think that's likely in the cards anytime soon, or even that major simplification. I think by going from 7 tax brackets down to 3, reducing corporate taxes, yes, creating a benefit for repatriated investments by overseas companies. I think that those types of things in a large way will have an impact on our economy, and I think that's really the primary purpose.
And so we're not going to get real simplification then, are we? Well, some simplification, but a lot of people wind up paying more under this tax plan, Michael. People like in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, California, Illinois, any place where you have a high state and local income tax, it's going to do away with your deduction for that, do away with your deduction for real estate taxes anyway. I'm not sure about state income taxes, but high real estate taxes, you're not going to be able to deduct that anymore. And what they're saying is, hey, don't worry about it because we're doubling the standard deduction. But there's a lot of people, probably you and I, that don't take advantage of the standard deduction. We're itemizers. Where are those people going to be left here, Michael?
Well, I think that I think you raise an interesting point, but here's the way I look at that. That's a great reason to move to Florida or Texas or some of these other states that just or a handful of states that don't have an income tax. And I think realistically, the states need to look at their existing budgets and they need to try to evaluate, well, how do we make things work without raising taxes in an oppressive manner? Because states like you just mentioned. Of course, California, New York, Chicago, or Illinois, those are all the high-tax states. So people are already beaten down. So, that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, they're already beaten down. So you think those states are going to have to do something? Because, or they're going to lobby. I think they're going to allow it back in, or there'll be a phase out or something like that. I don't see them just getting rid of it because it will have a devastating effect upon the real estate industry. And this is something that Trump really does care about. Hey, what about Dodd-Frank while we're on the topic here? Any getting rid of that? Modification, rollback, or is that part of a separate deal?
I think there is going to be some modification. We've already seen a lot of rumblings about it. I do want to make sure that there is protection in the banking system. Those are the types of things that can create major problems in the economy. We saw it in 2008, of course. So I think there are elements of Dodd-Frank that can be beneficial, but there are some other elements that are too restrictive on banks and investors. So those pieces I'd like to see modified.
Yeah, like the private mortgage market. I mean, they basically, and the rent to buy, all that, which is definitely a negative if you are looking to buy a house, you don't have the down payment. Or what about the basic secondary lending, somewhat distressed lending, hard money loans? Look, sometimes you're in a situation, you need cash right away. You've got equity in your home and you just can't go wait for a mortgage or whatever. You need to get that money yesterday. And they basically outlawed that. There's no more hard money loans under Dodd-Frank. Right. So what about that? Get rid of that?
Well, I think what that's created is the cottage industry of like the online lending. It's actually pretty interesting. Some of these groups like Lending Club, et cetera, and Prosper, a few other organizations like that essentially do crowdfunding for you to get money relatively quickly. I mean, some of those places can turn loans around in a quick time frame, like 2 to 3 days, and some a little bit longer. But it's one of the areas that popped up as a result of Dodd-Frank, and it does take the place. Typically interest rates are going to be a little bit lower than what you might find from private money, but it's still beneficial, and they seem to be working fairly well. Now they've had their share of controversy, but no, not like any other new industry out there.
Yeah, you got a lot of these specialty lenders, specialty retail lenders, if you will, that have sprung up. SoFi wants to refinance your student loans, your credit cards. I mean, you name it.
That's right.
Yeah,
and corporate lenders as well.
Yeah, corporate as well. I mean, we got these bridge loans that you never really had before. Lots of things like that. So overall, if Trump gets 90% of what he's looking here for, this is going to be a net plus?
I think it will be. I think it'll be a plus for individuals. I think it'll be a plus for businesses, and I think the government's going to see more revenue on the tax side as well because of the internal, the organic growth and the expansion that we experience through just regular economic growth.
Right. Hey, so what do you think the odds are that this thing's going to get through?
Well, given the track record of the pushback that he's had on other other policies that have been presented, I'd say probably 50-50, unfortunately. I wish I could say 80-20, but I think there is going to have to be a significant amount of debate. We're not getting any help from the Democrats, which I think is very unfortunate. And I think, as you mentioned right at the outset, it's just indicative of the nonsense that goes on in the swamp. And I just think it's very unfortunate, because the people that suffer are you, me, and other business owners who are just trying to make a small mark in the world and do what we do every single day and contribute to the economy. We can't pay attention too much to all of the nonsense that goes on. We can only, we do what we can do, and there's only so many hours in a day.
Well, Michael, there's so much economic ignorance in the world. It's really striking. And the concept of a society being savings-oriented, and that you basically defer consumption to gain a return on your savings. And then at a future time, you need the money for retirement, you need it to buy a house, you need it to pay for your kids' braces, whatever you need it for, a wedding, a funeral. And then you defer that, and that's the way true wealth is built in a capitalist society, is an alien concept. I remember this, like a couple of years ago, I was having dinner with some friends, and one of the guys I called Jeff the Socialist. And, I started explaining to him why low interest rates, no interest rates are so damaging to the economy, and that the way an economy grows is through savings, through deferred compensation. And he said to me, "Oh, that's the way it used to work. It doesn't work that way anymore." And I said, "And it used to work really well, and now it's totally screwed up."
That's right, and I think that's key. We're not that far removed from the generation of savers. I mean, I talk to baby boomers on a regular basis whose parents taught them the value of putting money aside, of just saving a little bit at a time. But you're right, low interest rate environment is a death knell to folks who are going to need to live on a fixed income in retirement. So it's a real challenge to see where we are, but the path to getting back to 5% CD rates is not on the horizon that I'm looking at.
No, they're going to do everything they can to keep interest rates artificially low, because the debt is so out of control and has no expectation of being brought into line, regardless who might be president, until it's forced upon us by external circumstances. Michael, we want to find out more about you. Where's the best place to find you?
Best place is to just go to our website, fellowshipfinancial.com. Again, it's fellowshipfinancial.com. You can, find information about us. You can find information about my book, Common Sense Income Strategies, there as well. And that's the quickest and easiest way to learn more.
All right. And if you've got any questions, comments for Michael, myself on this interview or any others, email us at kl@kerrylutz.com. The Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. The Twitter feed's at Kerry Lutz. And Michael, we'll talk again soon. Let's keep our fingers crossed that common sense in the nation's capital prevails. Well, maybe we should be praying. We should be down on our hands and knees and asking God to restore common sense to our world, not just our leaders in Washington and whatever your state capital might be. Michael, it's always a pleasure having you on, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Kerry. It's a pleasure as well.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.